Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. It's a very sad but good day to tune in and learn what is going on in Delaware. My name is Jonathan Quintella, and I'm the Church Ambassador Network Director for the beautiful state of Delaware. And today I have with me
India.
India.
Thanks, John. I'm India. I'm the operations director for the
No, you good.
Delaware
Keep going.
Family Policy Council. I was about to say Church Ambassador Network right after John here. For the Delaware Family Policy Council. Welcome, guys. Thank you for tuning in. This is our first live stream of a committee hearing. So it will be pretty exciting. Again, sad, but it'll be nice to be able to hear what's happening and be able to comment in real time and help you guys to take you through the process we go through when we're listening to these hearings.
Yeah, it's a very challenging day for Delaware when it comes to our legislative branch. And what are we dealing with today, India? If you can share with us a little bit.
Sure, we have Senate Bill 5, which is a constitutional amendment to enshrine abortion into the Delaware Constitution. Abortion's already legal in Delaware, but this is different. This is taking it to another level because instead of it being on a legislative level, now it's being considered a constitutional right, which means that any other attempts to try to protect the preborn will not be allowed. It will be considered unconstitutional if this bill passes.
And this is very significant, as you may or may not know, but we don't have very good numbers when it comes to Delaware. In the Senate, definitely don't have any numbers when it comes. They have supermajority, those that are in favor of this bill,
Right.
and
And constitutional amendments need a two-thirds majority to pass. But there is close to a two-thirds majority of a single party. So it will be in prayer and see what happens with this vote. But we're hoping today to be able to explain why this is so important just for human rights in general and for the idea of protecting the preborn in general, because if one group of people have their rights not protected, that has implications for human rights across the board. So we'll see some of that today. We're hearing that there are a lot of people lined up to testify today, so
that's
praise
good.
God for that. So we're excited to hear the testimonies and all the things that are going to be said. But before we jump in with a little more conversation, John, do you mind opening us up in
Yeah,
prayer?
let's pray. Let's give this time to the Lord. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity we have today, and just to come to you, and especially such a significant bill that is SB5. And I pray, Lord, that what happens today in the floor will glorify you. We thank you for all of those who have stepped up and made their way to Dover to testify. But Father, we also pray for those that are going to be in favor of this bill. Father, I pray that their minds will be changed today, that your light will shine so powerfully in that Senate floor. Lord, that your Holy Spirit will bring conviction, and Lord, and those that are not able to see truth and understanding that you are the giver of life. Life starts and ends with you. So yeah, we just give this day to you, and we pray that we just pray against this bill. We know that this bill does not honor you. So, Father, we just pray against it, but we trust you overall. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
So we are waiting. We're going to be sharing with you what happens in the floor and with little comments. If you have any comments, you can always drop them in the comment section. If you have any questions, please do. We will try our best to answer the questions that you may or may not have, or how sometimes the committee function, who makes the decisions and all that stuff. We know this bill is sponsored by Senator Townsend. He probably will be presenting this bill today in the committee, and we all gonna be going through all of that together today.
Sure. Yep. And I can really quickly just go through a quick review of how this process works as we're waiting for the live stream to start. Again, this is a constitutional amendment, but just in general, for any bill that passes through our legislature, it has to go through both branches, the House and the Senate. It starts off in a committee hearing. This is a small group of legislators that hear the bill. If it's released from committee, it's brought before the full House. So in the case of Senate Bill 5, because it's Senate Bill 5, it started on the Senate side. So it's being heard today in the Senate Health and Social Services Committee. And so that's a small group of senators that are hearing this bill. And then if it gets released from committee today, then it would go before the full Senate. After that, it would go over to the House side and repeat the process. Assuming it passed the Senate, then it would be brought before a small House committee. If it passed the House committee, brought before the House floor, then it would have to go before the governor. Now, the Senate Bill 5 is unique for two reasons. Again, it's a constitutional amendment, so instead of being passed by a majority vote, it needs to be passed by a 2/3 majority vote in both chambers. And the second reason why it's unique is it has to be passed 2 consecutive legislative sessions. So one session is 2 years. And this is the beginning, 2025 is the beginning of a 2-year session. So if this bill were to pass, it would pass this year, and then it would have to be brought up again anytime between 2027 and 2028.
Wow.
So we could be looking at a 4-year discussion on the issue of abortion, if assuming, again, that this bill passes and that it's not stopped before then.
Now, has this bill been introduced before? This is the first time it's been introduced?
It has been introduced before.
Okay.
So it's been introduced in 2022, right at the end of session. So I said this was that we have a 2-year session, but legislators only meet between January and June of those 2 years. So on June 30th, which is the final day, legislators introduced this very amendment. In fact, our current Lieutenant Governor, Kyle Evans-Gay, was the one who introduced it. Obviously, it wasn't introduced with the intention of passing. It was more of a signal, hey, this is what's coming.
It's coming.
And so here it is. Here we are today.
And they're very strategic how they do things. You know, they take one step at a time. And you know that with one bill, there's a line of bill that comes after that. And we see that with the assisted suicide bill that it was introduced to the committee in the House just a few weeks ago. And yeah, it's just like it's kind of opening the Pandora box, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, and that's why these things are so important, because a lot of times legislators don't start at the end. They start very incrementally. But if we understand the worldview premise behind these bills, then we can kind of have an idea of where the bills could lead us, what the intentions are for this bill, what the end process would look like. Well, it looks like the live stream started.
Yeah, let's go and see what they have. So right here we see Senator Pickney, who is the chair, and I guess the vice chair is Senator Townsend.
Yes, that sounds about right. It looks like they're meeting. Are they meeting in the House?
They are meeting in the Senate floor.
Are they meeting on the Senate floor? Okay.
Yeah, let's see.
Senator Poore will be joining us momentarily. Senator Buxton was here. We will mark him present when he returns. And Senator Wilson is not with us. With a sufficient number of members present, the Health and Social Services Committee will move to the first agenda item. We only have one agenda item for today. I would like to set the tone by saying it is our intention to get through as much public comment as possible. I am hoping that conversation between senators leaves us with sufficient time for us to not have to limit time on public comment. So please, senators, as we dialogue over this bill today, let's keep in mind that there are many members of the public who would like to speak on this legislation. And with that, I will turn it over to Senator Townsend for SB 5.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and for you to hold a committee hearing in a way that can maximize opportunity for public comment. I guess I'll note, as you had just mentioned, Senator Buxton has joined us. So Senate Bill 5 follows another Senate Bill 5 from 8 years ago, in which we modified Delaware law that had been on the books but was at that time invalid and unlawful under prevailing U.S. Supreme Court precedent with regard to reproductive freedoms. So for the past 8 years, the Delaware Code had brought us to what I firmly believe to be the prevailing view throughout the community with regard to the importance of reproductive freedom. We now have this year's Senate Bill 5, which seeks to put the same protections in the Delaware Constitution to reaffirm our commitment to these freedoms and liberties, to do so in the way that is most paramount that we can do at the state level at a time when people are concerned about recent years' developments and the risk of people being able to have these liberties and these freedoms. And I believe inherent in that the fundamental respect related thereto. I know we have Mark Catrona, who I've asked to come up from his office downstairs, who is, as always, wonderful working with Mark on legislation to answer any sort of broader constitutional legal questions with regard to the structure of this. This defines reproductive freedoms to include not only abortion, but several other rights and procedures. I'll note two things. Number one, I take full responsibility from a drafting perspective that we did not adopt the exact same language with regard to on line 9. It says professional judgment of attending healthcare professional. We're going to be doing like a substitute that modifies it by putting the language in there that we currently have in the Delaware Code with regard to good faith judgment. That's the prevailing framework that I apologize I should have used in the first instance. So we'll be doing that. The other thing I'll say, and this is partly in response to an email that was received earlier today, this legislation seeks to put in the Constitution the rights and framework that already exist under Delaware Code with regard to abortion care. This legislation, this in no way would supersede or undo parental rights that exist right now with regard to health care sought for their children. So as a general statement, I want to make that clear. If we need to describe more kind of the way the Constitution operates in that regard, happy to do so. But in no way does this do that. And I appreciate the emails this morning from someone who had asked that question or made that point. But that is not how the constitutional language operates. So with that, Madam Chair, it's pretty, I believe, pretty straightforward, and I'm happy to answer questions or for Mark to do so as he has arrived. But also happy, first and foremost, to be able to have public comment on the topic.
Just
Thank you,
really
Senator
quickly,
Townsend.
something that I wanted to mention about parental rights that he mentioned. Just to be clear, parental consent is not required in Delaware Code right now. It's only parental notification. So that's just something that you guys will want to keep in mind. We can go ahead and tune back in.
With the presentation of the bill, I will turn to committee members first. There are also other senators present who, if have questions, will also turn to. Are there any questions from members of the committee?
Yes.
With wonderful decorum, Senator, I turn it over to you for questions.
This one works. I prefer to sit here, and I think we can figure it out.
This isn't working either.
One more quick comment as they're figuring out the mic situation here. Someone asked in the chat, and I'll reiterate again, yes, parental notification is required, not parental consent, and the parental notification can be circumvented in current code the way it's written. So that's something very, very important to keep in mind. Also, notice that Senator Townsend responded directly to an email he received. Yep. So just want to bring that out, that the emails you guys send are so important. They are being read, and they are being considered. So just want to give you guys an encouragement there that your emails do matter. They do make a difference.
And send your email.
Yes,
Let's just
please
send your
do.
email clearly. Even right now, as you're watching, you can open a different window. And the DFPC does a great job making that process very, very easy. So make sure you send that email.
Absolutely, yes. /Protect Life is the URL.
Real quick is God has a plan. And at 12:04, I got a text from my wife saying, I need a call. I need you to call me ASAP. She proceeds to be very upset in the text because I'm not answering the call because she has, in her words, been in a car accident. Now, no one's harmed, no one's hurt, the car's okay. But that's at 12:04, it's now 12:14, so I'm not insensitive to her plight, but I do recognize the importance of being here today. And so I think we're going to be okay handling that, but I need to come back down. I need to bring my heart rate back down, and I need to better articulate what it is that I would try to ask today. I did not hear all of what Senator Townsend said. I've got a couple things to maybe ask, but I was hoping, right, that I'd have a few more minutes to chill. Obviously, no one on the committee wants to ask questions. That's okay. I'll ask one. I want to clarify something here. I didn't see this. I just did.
Senator Buxton?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. If you would like a few minutes, we can turn to other senators.
I'll tell you what, I'll do one and then I'll stop and then come back if that's okay. And I appreciate you offering that. So the League of Women's Voters fully supports, as I read this now, it says they fully support and endorse the constitutional amendment codifying, constitutionalizing the right to an abortion. That's what that says. I know they're going to speak to it, but I guess I just wanted to make sure that was the case. It's the question I have, and this is to the sponsor, and again, man, I'm not an expert, and you, in fact, are a lawyer. You've been working on this, I think, since 17, maybe earlier. I don't know. I've been working on it since this morning. I know that as a senator, I'm expected to deal with this, but as a dad and as a father and someone who's lived here for 59 years, this is not something we readily engage in. So I'll do my best. I want to understand why we're here. This makes it a constitutional right in the Delaware's Constitution. Is that based off of, or is that in response to the Supreme Court's kind of challenge? And maybe it is, I don't know. Challenge and what their decision was. Senator Townsend.
Senator Townsend?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, I guess I'd say, Senator, not specifically. This is something that we've been looking at for several years now, I think even pre-Dobbs, to try and affirm as strongly as we can the state of Delaware level our commitment to these rights. And as you know, that nothing gets more fundamental than having in the Constitution. So I don't think it's driven specifically, by Dobbs. I think people acknowledge that in the wake of recent changes at the federal level, people are concerned about different avenues through which these rights might be taken away. Might not be realized. And so this is certainly coming at a time when in that context, we are trying to do everything we can, as we did before, to try and make these rights as fundamental as possible in Delaware.
And thank you. And that's a very short, simple answer. And these are my questions. I did not have them fed to me. I tried to formulate what I was trying to think. Because there's a lot going on, right? We could discuss abortion in Delaware and law, but really what we're talking about is the necessity for a constitutional amendment. According to the Supreme Court, if I get this right, they said that there's no constitutional protection at the U.S. level. Is that fair? And so they push it down to the states. And then my thought was, well, maybe it's a response that, let's use Trump's administration as an example, that they could come in and essentially make laws that said, we want to ban it after 8 weeks. But technically, the Supreme Court's decision has keeps them from doing that. Is that fair?
I think, Madam Chair, it's kind of back and forth.
Oh, yeah. I'm asking, you're the sponsor.
I understand.
Right?
I understand. That's when I completely understand.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, Senator, no apologies needed. I sometimes I sometimes default to sort of the back and forth as if we're in the session, and maybe we're not fully in that way. My apologies, as I was worried about that dynamic. I did not fully catch any of your question. If you had asked about what the current U.S. Supreme Court precedent does, it says it pushes to the state level.
I'm trying to understand why we're here, right? Yep. Respectfully, not trying to be, I'm not trying to litigate something in front of a lawyer, but I'm trying to understand in my mind, right? So the Supreme Court's decision prevents a U.S. senator and U.S. congressman or woman from coming in, creating a law that says Delaware, after 8 weeks, it's a federal ban after 8 weeks, without a constitutional amendment.
My understanding would be that the Dobbs decision removed the judicial protections on these rights that had existed for nearly 50 years. And so now it is a question left to the states.
Yes.
It's not as if that Supreme Court decision would itself, I think, prevent federal legislation to try and address this issue one way or the other. Obviously, people are concerned that current federal dynamics would mean that there could be legislation to take these rights away from people at the state level through federal action.
Wouldn't that require,
Open dialogue, senators.
thank you. And again, I'm just trying to understand. In order for the federal action to occur, wouldn't that require a constitutional amendment at that level?
I don't believe so, but I guess what I would expect would be if that were to happen through legislation, people could seek to challenge that with regard to whether or not new legislation either does in fact violate the Dobbs decision, or that the Supreme Court might want to clarify whether or not in the Dobbs decision they truly meant to open it up to a matter of federal legislation. So there's a bit of a sort of speculation involved in that. But here, here at the state level, this is about doing everything we believe that we can do to make these rights, as a matter of Delaware law, as fundamental as possible, not knowing for sure exactly what will happen at the federal level, not knowing for sure whether federal legislation or a federal judicial decision would in some ways override that as a matter of U.S. constitutional law or principles.
And so I'll leave that one alone. It appears to me, and I did try to research and talk to folks way smarter than me in this space that said that technically, yes, that they couldn't, the decision pushes it to the state. Now the state can do what we're doing, right? But the federal level, you technically can't anymore unless you identify it specifically in the Constitution. There's no right to it. But so let's move to the state one. So that's kind of using that logic, right or wrong. It's to say, because currently right now, and again, what's obvious, currently right now, the state, as far as I can tell, is one of the most progressive states in the country when it comes to abortion rights. And so currently right now, we have laws on the books that preserve and protect, right or wrong, the rights to accessible abortion. I mean, that's fair. So I don't know why we need to do this. So why again? I know you may have explained it, but then why do we need to do this?
No, certainly, I appreciate it, Senator. I think what this does is it maximizes the protection of these rights under Delaware law. It is a statement of the legislature through two consecutive general assemblies, obviously, as in the way we do our constitutional amendments, therefore would be reaffirmed as the will of the broader Delaware public, that these rights are important enough to be in our Constitution, therefore not as subject to change as a matter of state law in the future.
So, and I say that, and then I said I'm going to stop after this one and then maybe hopefully come back. I'm curious, the other legislators in the room, are they a part of the discussion, or are they just going to give comment? Madam Chair. The others that are part of this. I only ask that because some of them have a lot more, maybe they have something I can gain.
Additional senators will be able to participate in dialogue with the bill sponsor.
Well, and I appreciate that. So then, yeah, I'll basically say that. Yeah, because I understand the importance from your perspective. The idea, the belief is that, in a fantasy world of mine, Delaware suddenly becomes red. We could technically come in and change this how the legislature works. We could change the current status of laws, or we could, in fact, go back and undo what currently will be done with this law if it passes. Correct?
Well, that's certainly one aspect of it. I mean, I don't know if there would be another world in which the federal-state interplay unfolds where it turns on whether or not Delaware had chosen to make it a matter of statutory right versus constitutional right. I suppose there's a world in which that becomes, the relevant federal question. I don't know. I mean, obviously, a whole lot of things are changing and different than people thought before, and so that's the exact moment where the reaffirmation of these values at the Delaware level is important. But I appreciate the question, Senator, and you trying to kind of probe the contours of the legal framework. I just don't know if there's anyone who could definitively say exactly how it would play at the federal level and how they interpret the state's decision to put in the Constitution versus put in statute versus say nothing at all on these topics.
Yeah, it's a challenge, right? Sitting in this chair, I mean, you're talking about an amendment to Delaware's Constitution. I mean, that's a big deal in a state where we currently have, as I understand it, a woman's right to choose up to viability, which is a pretty progressive position considering other states. Delaware taxpayers, according to state law right now, are required to pay for Medicaid abortions regardless of their beliefs. That's a challenging bill, but it's passed. College students have access to emergency abortion, and parents are prevented from deciding on whether or not their 16-year-old daughter, and correct me if I'm wrong there, 16-year-old daughter should have an abortion. Is that true?
And that's with regard to abortion. I know there are other aspects of care, of healthcare more broadly, that parents do have rights associated with it. So this doesn't disturb any existing framework in that kind of regard. But yes, there is the issue,
Sure.
and as you can appreciate, sometimes that can be very, very relevant when perhaps the woman's father is the person who impregnated her, which is a particularly important aspect of the privacy involved in that decision.
And then I would suggest to you, and that's a fair statement, that I would support, if they're not already in law, any right to an abortion that would include incest, rape, or other, even if that upsets some of the folks in this room right now that would be challenged to hear that, whose beliefs are far more committed than mine. I'm not perfect. As I stop with these questions, I am not perfect. I am not a savior of the folks who are to either far side. I'm just here to better understand it right now. My beliefs are that unborn child shall be protected, and if there's any way that I can gain ground, take back ground, that's all what I'm looking to do. There are other folks in this room, other legislators, that are more perfect than I in this space. My goal is to defend the rights and try to gain back ground. I know that's a separate conversation. My concern here is that, well, like you said, we confuse, like we use an example that challenges the thought. My concern is that we're here on a Monday at 12 o'clock, not to protect women's rights, but to further divide. And that's just my opinion, and that's what disappoints me. But I appreciate the time, Madam Chair.
I think it's really clear, Townsend, what their purpose is. It's just to kind of like solidify that there will not be pretty much a reverse.
For sure. I wanted to bring out, too, for Senator Buxton, first of all, he's the only conservative legislator on the committee right now. So he needs our prayers. Someone asked, is he on our side? We'll talk a little bit more about this, but just keep in mind that what we're helping people to understand is the worldview behind the value of life. And that's something that even our conservative legislators are learning and growing in their understanding of. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Yeah. But just to very quickly give deference to that question. But again, notice the impact of your comments and your calls and your relationship. These legislators are just people, right? Yep. Just like you and I. And they are benefiting from your feedback. Senator Buxton is speaking the way that he is because of all the people in the room right now, people like you. And so he needs our prayers. The whole committee needs our prayers. But just wanted to bring that up.
As important it is, because they're representing us, and they need to know what we stand for.
Absolutely.
It's not just casting an email that will go out there. I hear again and again how they receive emails and they read, and the amount of emails that they received in such important bills like this, how crucial it is that the people have the voice. That's our voice. So
yeah, absolutely.
This elevates what's in current code to more than just a statute. It elevates it to a condition in the Constitution, which would require, if it were to be, if someone would want to change it in the future, it would require more than just a bill in the future. It would require the process for changing a constitutional amendment, which is the passage of two general assemblies.
Correct. I'd say that both as the immediate legal framework is that, Senator Hansen, that you said, but also acknowledging the conversations we've had over the past few years about the broader span of maternal health care. It does create more specificity as to some of the care involved, prenatal care, postpartum care, things like that, which are currently silent in the code on this issue, but should be part of that fundamental right and process to seek and access that care. I think part of the issue is we wouldn't want people to think that being silent as to the total spectrum of care involved there meant that we're suggesting that people's rights aren't fundamental as to that care as well.
All right, thank you.
Senator Townsend, just for clarification, does the bill provide any additional protections for healthcare professionals who provide reproductive care?
no, this doesn't provide any additional, nor does it take any away.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any other senators on the committee with questions? I'll turn to senators in their desks. Senator Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a question, but I do have a statement. I don't know if this is appropriate time or if I should wait till later, in case some of the other senators had questions.
You can make your statement, Senator.
Okay, I have a shorter version and I have a longer version. I don't know how much time I'd be allowed.
I don't plan on limiting your time, Senator. I do want you to, and all of our members, to just be mindful that there are a significant amount of members, individuals here who would like to give public comment, and I don't want to and don't plan to have to limit the 2-minute comment, but if we start to run out of time because of Senator dialogue, that will impede on the time that we have for public comment. So you can make your own informed decision from there.
Okay, I appreciate that. Can you tell me how many people are signed up to testify?
Ellen.
Because I figured if this lasted a half hour, which is so far has lasted.
While they're figuring that out, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that were said. So first of all, people were asking about how is it that the senators didn't fully understand the law. I think that's important to understand as well. The role that Nandi plays at DFPC, and just keep in mind she's not the only one doing this, but the role that she plays is such a major role because senators rely on people like Nandi, like constitutional attorneys, like their staff to help them to understand these bills. Because as Senator Buxton pointed out, there's real life happening, and so they may not have the opportunity to read through a bill and understand it and digest it. That's also one of the reasons why having this bill rushed through is such a big deal, because this is such a major issue. Senators should have the opportunity to process this.
We see this again and again in legislative hall, how these bills are introduced and go in the committee almost in the same day at times, and then it goes to the floor. Right after the same day it was in the committee, they push it through the floor. And I think there's an intention behind that.
For sure. Yeah.
I see what Senator Richardson.
This includes 22 pairs of autosomes and 1 pair of sex chromosomes, XX for female and XY for males. The human body is generally believed to have around 78 to 80 organs, depending on how one defines an organ. Just a couple weeks after conception, the embryo forms a neural plate. This is the base for the nervous system. The brain will grow at a rate of 250,000 neurons per minute. All this points to a designer who says in his word to rescue those being led away to death. Knowing all this about the human body, how can someone declare, my body, my choice? Self-defense, a fundamental human right, allows individuals to protect themselves from imminent harm or threat of violence. The key principles of self-defense laws include imminent threat. The threat being defended against must be immediate or about to happen, and reasonable belief. The defender must have a reasonable belief of imminent, serious bodily harm or death. What threat does a developing fetus pose? How can the use of lethal force be justified? The Eighth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says that excessive bail should not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Delaware abolished the death penalty in 2024 following it. I'll just end that there. Prior to its abolition, Delaware had a history of capital punishment, with the last execution occurring in 2012. So Delaware legislatures recognize the taking of human life, even the lives of those who commit horrendous crimes, should not be allowed. Our state protects those who have committed evil acts. Why then are we okay with the taking of the lives of those who are innocent, those who have not committed a crime? If you recognize the preborn as human life, a completely unique person, their extinguishment through chemical or surgical dismemberment has to be classified as cruel and unusual punishment. At the end of World War II, trials were held at Nuremberg. One of those trials was the doctor's trial, in which defendants were accused of committing crimes against humanity, such as conducting medical experiments on prisoners of war, some of which included children. Some of those disturbing experiments including prisoners were severely poisoned so they could be studied as they died from the effects. And then in another one, prisoners would be burned with phosphorus so that different medications could be tested to see how well they treated the burns. Crime against humanity include murder and torture. Preborns are exposed to chemical and surgical abortions to effectuate their deaths. This used to include saline solution abortion that burned the unborn baby. Senate Bill 5 is nothing but a large-scale attack against innocent children, the very essence of a crime against humanity. From SB 5 touts a reproductive freedom. It says, every individual has a fundamental right to reproductive freedom, which entails the right to make effective decisions, and then it lists them. That statement emphasizes the problems that arise when we say our rights come from government and not from God. We are putting government as the highest authority when we make laws like Senate Bill 5. What I wholeheartedly believe is that we don't get the final say, our Creator gets the final say. This realization was proclaimed in the Declaration of Independence that said all men and women are endowed with certain inalienable rights, which include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those rights are fundamental and cannot be taken away by government. The preamble to the Delaware Constitution reinforces this belief. It says, through divine goodness, all people have by nature the rights of worshiping and serving their Creator according to the dictates of their consciences, of enjoying and defending life and liberty, of acquiring and protecting, and so forth. Let me say this one more time. When it comes to life and liberty, we don't get the final say. Our Creator gets the final say. Senate Bill 5 says, an individual's right to reproductive freedom shall not be denied, burdened, or infringed upon. Are the unborn not individuals? That original DNA molecule formed at conception has within it the capacity for reproduction. Imagine that. The ability to regenerate new life contained in that single cell. When we dehumanize the unborn, we are dehumanizing ourselves. If light at the early stages of conception can be disregarded, why not later? Senate Bill 5 says this state may regulate the provision of abortion care after fetal viability, but then it adds, provided that in no circumstance shall this state prohibit an abortion that, in the professional judgment of an intending healthcare professional, is medically indicated to protect the life or physical or mental health of the pregnant individual. Now I'm going to skip that part. How can the taking of a child's life improve the mental condition of a mother? How can this be decided impulsively by an attending healthcare professional without risk? I think the answer is clearly that it cannot. Yet Senate Bill 5 leaves this decision up to healthcare professionals who are not psychologists. I want to conclude with a biography of one of the leaders of the pro-choice movement. You heard that right, the pro-choice movement. Dr. Bernard Nathanson was an American physician and co-founder in 1969 of the National Association for the Repeal of Abortion Laws, later renamed National Abortion Rights Action League. Dr. Nathanson was responsible for close to 75,000 abortions during his career as an obstetrician and took part in sanctioned abortions on tens of thousands of unborn babies. By the mid-1970s, however, Nathanson began to undergo a drastic interior change and eventually declared himself to be pro-life in 1979. Nathanson produced the film in 1985, The Silent Scream, which shows sonogram images of a child in the womb attempting to move away from abortionist instruments. I'm almost done. In 1996, he was baptized at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City by then Cardinal John O'Connor. Critics of Nathanson's conversion were perplexed as to how a former atheist Jew became one of the most prominent Catholic pro-life advocates. Dr. Nathanson died from cancer on February 21, 2011. A priest said Nathanson knew that he was completely forgiven of his sin by the waters of baptism. This is the God we serve, the God who has the final say. And I just say that according to scriptures, God desires that no one would not be saved. I have two models here. This is a child at 22 weeks. This is a child at 26 weeks. What we're saying, this is pre-viability, and that child can be destroyed through dismemberment, because at this stage, it has to be through dismemberment, which means arms are cut off, it's extracted, legs are cut off, they're extracted through the uterus and then disposed of. At 26 weeks, this is protected unless in the mind of an abortionist that it might interfere with a woman's mental health. I just think this is atrocious to think that we need to put this into our Constitution. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the hearing today. I think it is critical that we speak in frank terms. I have a few questions of the sponsor, then I have a few comments, if I may.
Open
Thank
dialogue,
you.
Senator.
Senator Townsend, are there any other things in this bill, such as gender-affirming care, meaning does this constitutional amendment allow for, as I refer to it, as gender mutilation?
Thank you, Senator. I'm going to use your first terminology regarding gender-affirming care, and my understanding is that the language in this legislation does not relate to that form of health care. No.
Thank you, because there was some concerns out there. Another question: Roe v. Wade and the Dobbs decision were court rulings. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
They're not laws.
Well, no, judicial decisions are laws. They have legal effect, but I'd say in the Roe v. Wade decision that established as a matter of law at the federal level a woman's constitutional right to seek an abortion. The Dobbs decision removed that right. So I'll defer to you as you frame your questions, how you view that in terms of creating laws, but both have a very real legal impact and therefore a very serious impact out in the community.
So those decisions, if I may, those decisions prompted law?
I would say that the Supreme Court's decision in Roe v. Wade created legal protections for people. Delaware, for example, in the wake of that decision in 1973, did not update its statute. As a matter of law, it didn't have to, because there was now the constitutional protection with regard to reproductive freedoms, and that changed over time with additional case law that made clear certain dynamics of that. So that had the effect of law. And then in 2017, the General Assembly passed a bill updating the Delaware Code to adopt that framework as a matter of Delaware law. And a key reason we did that, and I was the lead sponsor of that, was the belief that the federal protection might not stand much longer given the trends we were seeing, which I'll note was disappointing given that judicial nominees would appear before the United States Senate and indicate that they would not disturb longstanding law, and then in fact, several of them did. And then in the form of the Dobbs decision, which took away the federal protection. So I apologize again. I think all have the effect of law. Some creates the legal protection, then took it away, and meanwhile at the state level, we worked to try and make sure the legal protections were in place here.
So back to my previous career, Miranda was not a law, it was a court decision, correct?
I would say no. I think Miranda was a court decision that created legal obligations among law enforcement, legal rights among they're at that point, they're not defendants. They're sort of, they're assailants or suspects. But no, I'd say it was law.
So it generated laws to, what I'm getting at is legislatures pass laws. You can't pass laws or can't make laws from the bench, isn't that correct?
That is not correct. You can make laws from the bench.
So we have three separate branches of government, but we're not separate.
No, we are separate. They're structured to provide checks and balances on one another. The legislature passes legislation, which are laws. The executive branch has certain authority in the form of executive orders or regulations through agencies that have the effect of law. And then you have the court, which can either interpret those laws, which then by doing so has a legal effect, or in certain instances, through the interpretation of the U.S. Constitution, can create legal protections through the interpretation of that document. Okay. All three branches, I think, have lawmaking power. It's how they do it is the question.
I don't think that's how it's designed, but I believe that that's the way it works today. But anyway, thank you. I appreciate that explanation. As Senator Richardson said, excuse me, current laws, legislation in the state of Delaware allows for abortion pretty much anywhere along the way.
Okay, no, that's actually, I don't know if that's what he said, but that's not correct if that's what he said. No, essentially, it is absolutely not correct, and it's essentially incorrect to say that.
Okay, would you explain that incorrectness?
Certainly.
What I said, not what he said.
Certainly, that in accordance with how the broader public feels about this, a woman has a right to seek an abortion up until the point of viability. After viability, a woman is able to seek an abortion for purposes of life or health, for her life and health. And I'll note, just generally speaking, that when this debate comes up, and I appreciate how people feel about it on both sides, the dramatically high percentage of abortions occur in the early weeks of pregnancy.
So at 22 weeks, that's viable.
It's difficult
Anything
to put,
prior to that, essentially.
It's difficult to put a specific number on it. It can really come down to the individual case. That is approximately the range in which we believe that viability triggers under the law.
So abortion is a woman's right, is that correct?
Yes.
So the father has no say?
Correct. It is a woman's body.
Wow. So if I was a father and I wanted the baby, the woman could still do away with my baby?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily characterize it only as your baby, but
well,
I think the issue is that fundamentally we say in this complicated, very profound topic, which I think often the debates and discussions do not do justice to how profound this is, including with regard to those situations beyond viability where the life or health of the mother is at stake and the absolutely wrenching process that she can go through and her family goes through and her doctor goes through and realizing that an abortion is needed. The debate often doesn't do justice to that process. But fundamentally, yes, the right to seek an abortion is a right of the person whose body we are talking about here. And the fundamental aspect of someone else telling her what she can or cannot do with her body, we believe, violates certain fundamental principles of personal liberties.
If I may, just a bit further, yet if she has the child, I as a father are responsible for payment, for support, am I not?
Well, I guess I'd say that can depend on the facts of the relationship that you are in a variety of ways. But fundamentally, I don't think that that's the topic that we're talking about. I understand the connection you're trying to draw, but that's not the topic that we're talking about. Nor is I believe sufficient.
Is a bit of.
I just don't believe that's sufficient basis for you to be able to tell someone to do with their body. But I can appreciate how you view it and how we don't agree on that topic.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up. I understand where the baby is housed is one body, but that baby in there is its own DNA. It is its own being. So the Constitution speaks to life, liberty, and the pursuit of justice, pursuit of happiness, rather. Is it more important that that mother be happy and the child be disposed of? Or is it more important that that child be protected and a mother can put that child up for adoption? What's more important?
I think what's important is the fact that our law and through this legislation, our Constitution would try to acknowledge the complexities of this in a balanced way that reflects the balanced approach the broader community has come to understand to be the proper balance to strike after nearly 50 years. It doesn't make it an easier topic. It's always been one that's been a point of disagreement. We can agree to disagree, and I frankly just try to keep it, sort of respectful in the ways in which we talk about the issue, given what it means to people on both sides. So I understand your points with regard to how you want to look at that.
Well, I appreciate that understanding. You keep going back to the 50 years, and now they were taken away. Didn't Justice Bader Ginsburg disagree with Roe v. Wade? I don't want to go too far off line here, but did she not say that that was a bad decision?
I'm not a constitutional scholar or a scholar of that topic, but what I would say is that people can agree with the fundamental rights established, but perhaps wonder about the jurisprudence. I have no idea if Justice Ginsburg fits in that category or not. There are people who believe that this should be a right. There are people who believe that the idea that the state can tell someone exactly what to do with their body at any stage of pregnancy, particularly pre-viability, is one that does not do justice to what personal liberties should mean, no matter how profound the nature of what we're talking about. I understand Justice Ginsburg as someone who fully supported a woman's rights in this context. I have no idea what her views on the underlying sort of jurisprudent philosophy was as regards Roe v. Wade. And I think part of what happened here...
There's a lot being said here, and there's a lot that I could say. But I just wanted to really quickly bring up with the discussion of viability. Notice that Senator Townsend says we cannot tell a woman what she can do with her own body. And then he says particularly before viability. So my question would be, what's the difference between telling a woman what to do with her body before viability or after viability? Why is viability the line? And notice that Senator Lawson asked Senator Townsend what the line was, and he said it's difficult to say.
Hey, is it 26?
No line.
Is it 22 weeks? What is that?
He said, is it 22 weeks? It's difficult to say.
Oh, you know.
Right.
So when?
So hopefully you guys could see in this exchange that you can't have a wishy-washy perspective. Either life is inherently valuable from the moment it starts, or it's not. Any other line is just not valid. And you either protect life because it's human life, or the state can either give you rights or it can take rights away. Yeah. That's the two options that we're faced with.
To get an abortion, if you can find a doctor that does that. I don't know why we need to put it into the Constitution, because our constitutions historically have spoken to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And this isn't happy no matter what. It doesn't make the woman happy. The mother ultimately suffers severely. Everyone I've ever known that had an abortion has some remorse. It certainly doesn't speak well to our future, because we're killing our future. We're killing our future, and you can't call it anything else. And I don't think that's very smart of us to do that, to put it in the Constitution. We've gone where we've gone. I don't think we need to make it further. I think we need to stand where we are, if that's what we believe, and to put it into the Constitution is just a step too far. I think you speak of those current society wants. I don't know that they want it in our Constitution. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Madam Chair.
Thank you, members of the committee. Do you have more questions, Senator? Thank you. We'll turn to you, Senator.
On a positive note, all is well at home, just a shaking up bride, but she's going to be fine.
We're glad for that, Senator.
I know, and I appreciate that. I mean, this is a difficult subject, right? And I don't know if there's sides here. I suspect there are. My hope at the end of this thing is not to create lifelong enemies, although I accept the consequence if that's what happens. It's to say that this is a space that we need to have conversations about. I want to speak directly to the bill rather quickly, and it's kind of maybe to clarify something. It says, and Senator Lawson, and I'm sure Senator Richardson, I was out, but said some things. Senator Lawson clarified it already. I just want to make sure. I don't want Republicans in this space to be considered leaving here today an anti-women's reproductive rights. We are focusing on abortion because that's the hang-up. We're disappointed in the fact that we're here today having to look at this as a constitutional amendment, given where we are in the state. But in the language of the bill, there's a couple things in here, because I think for the most part, I don't support the necessity for a constitutional amendment. I don't. But I believe that myself, I know I have, and I think some of my other colleagues have, on both sides, supported many of the things we're seeking to codify. You know, things like pre- and postnatal care. I know we've supported that, right? I know that we have supported miscarriage management, if I understand that as I understand it to be. Infertility care, we just dealt with that last year. We supported that. You know, I don't know if there's examples where I was challenging maybe some of the language, but I believe for the most part we supported those things. I don't know what sterilization means, so it might be something very benign. Is it a vasectomy? Sterilization? What do you mean there? Do you know?
Well, I'll note that as defined here, this relates to pregnancy, and then a list of sterilization. I think it's certainly in line with the idea of fundamental liberties involved in that decision, even for men, but here it's related to the topic of pregnancy. I think, Senator, to your point, what we're talking about here is, in fact, we have seen other jurisdictions where some of these items have been rolled back or at risk of doing so. So it's not to say that you haven't supported some of these initiatives. Right. Fertility care is a great example of a lot of bipartisan support over the years for bringing more attention to that topic, more rights to that topic, more support for that. But I think we've seen these kinds of topics become this type of care become the topic of infringement of rights in other jurisdictions in a way that causes people to wonder, would Delaware follow that same path? And so here we're here trying to say that no, we would not. We actually want to make sure we enshrine these rights in the Constitution.
And that's fair. And in fairness to us, if you switch chairs, I get what you're saying, because what you see in other states, we see here in our state from a different perspective. Fair? I mean, we just feel like that's what we're looking at. I mentioned, short of kind of a fantasy world where the Republicans take over, I was no way indicating that if we were in a fantasy world where Republicans took over, that it would be my belief that we would roll back the legislation. So for anybody that's trying to, and this will happen, I suspect. My concern, as I said before, this is a very divisive topic meant to divide because we already have laws in place. And my concern is that words that I've stated today will be used against me at a later time. I don't enjoy that. I accept the consequences. I hope that at least if they're used against me, they're in the proper context. I hope that. I know there's no guarantee of that, but I certainly, hope that, because, as I, come to a close, and the good news is I am. Here we are. Because for me, as I said before when I ran, I never spoke about, I taught health education. We were told don't speak about, abortion, just kind of dance around it, I mean, we were just encouraged because it was a very difficult subject. I get it, right? And not one that we need to take an opinion on as educators. We just need to state the facts, right? And, but if I was to explain it, viability, what is viability? Is it 1 month? No. Is it 2 months in the state of Delaware? No. Well, it can't be 4 months. No, it's better than that. It's 6 months if you use simple math, but let's say that each month isn't 4 weeks. And let's call it 5 months, viability, a choice up to 5 months. I don't care who you're talking to, whether you're on one side of the aisle or the other, that's challenging, especially for somebody who has 4 and just held my grandson last month and just the other night. I mean, I love that grandchild the same way I love my child the moment my daughter told me she was with child. Now, I get it. The woman should retain the rights. There's some things in there that you're saying I get, but at what point does the father have rights? What point does the unborn child have rights? And I think that's a conversation that is not unfair to ask and one that we should be having, because when we live in a state where viability is defined, Google search it right now, 24 weeks. Don't hide behind the weeks. When you put it in months, and you know the first time you notice that baby bump or that child kicking, or you can hear the heartbeat, I mean, that should get to what a quote that I saw that was striking and important. Because I want to be clear, those listening, and will use my words inaccurately, we're here on a Monday because of abortion, not prenatal, not the other things that I mentioned. It's because our concerns with abortion. I'd like to read a quote. They talk about the issue as if it is not complicated. Abortion should never be a conversation that isn't somewhat complicated. But the quote is, they talk about the issue as if it is not complicated, difficult, or more specifically, heart-wrenching for the woman. I said that over there. My friend Senator Townsend said it, I believe, in 2017, if the quote is right. He wasn't wrong then, I'm not wrong now. The conversation around abortion should always be held with deep regarding concerns. We should not allow it to be hidden into an overreaching reproductive or health care, because all of us believe in a woman's rights. I don't care which side of the aisle you're on. Your rights as a woman to control your body. The only question then becomes, and I think it's a fair one for you to disagree, but us to have the conversation, at what point? At what point do the father and the unborn child get recognized? And that's not unsettling to ask. I thank you. I thank all the folks, and I am welcome and I am open to a conversation for folks that are upset, including the League of Women Voters. I can have that conversation without getting argumentative. We can talk about this difficult space, right? And for those folks on the right to life side, if I fell short in your eyes, I'm doing the very best that I can, having a relationship with the God that I know who's guided me here today. So thank you for your time, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. We will now turn to public comment. Public commenters will have 2 minutes. If you have not signed up for public comment, please see the front desk here to sign up for public comment. We will begin with April Thomas Jones. You'll have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon. I am April Thomas Jones. I am the President and CEO of Planned Parenthood for Delaware. I am honored to testify here today in support of Senate Bill 5. This will enshrine reproductive rights, including abortion, in the Delaware State Constitution. This bill is crucial for protecting the reproductive freedoms of all Delawareans, ensuring access to care, and upholding our shared values of equality and autonomy. Senate Bill 5 provides a vital constitutional protection for reproductive rights, particularly in a time when these rights are under increasing threat across our nation. In the wake of the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade with the Dobbs decision, reproductive rights are no longer guaranteed at the federal level. So states must take action. By passing Senate Bill 5, we are demonstrating that Delaware is a state that prioritizes the health, the dignity, and the autonomy of its residents. Access to abortion is an essential part of comprehensive reproductive health care. Ensuring that this right is protected in Delaware's Constitution will safeguard the ability of Delawareans to access care without fear, without political interference, nor legal challenges. Reproductive health care is not just about abortion. It is about empowering individuals to make decisions about their health and their well-being, whether it's planning for a family, accessing birth control, or seeking care for pregnancy complications. And we all know that reproductive care restrictions disproportionately affect low-income individuals, people of color, and people living in rural areas. By adding reproductive rights to the Delaware Constitution, we are ensuring that all people, regardless of their income, their race, or where they live, can access the care they need. Delaware has long been a state where compassion and evidence-based health care is prioritized, and where individuals' rights to make their own health care decisions are respected. By passing this amendment, Delaware will continue to be a beacon of progress and respect for reproductive rights in this region. And while Delaware has made great strides to protecting reproductive rights through legislation, laws can be changed by future legislators.
Excuse me, that is time.
Thank you. I thank you all for your time today.
She mentioned that respect life. But
Thank
who's
you.
respecting
Again,
the
I
life
would like
of
to
the
remind
unborn?
members
And
of the
why?
public that-
Why are we
And
respecting
why?
life? What's your foundation?
Where's the compassion?
Right.
She said, like, this is a state which shows compassion. What kind of compassion is that?
They don't have any moral basis for protecting life or protecting compassion because they've already rejected the moral basis, which is that we're created in God's image. So it's just speaking out of both sides of their mouth. They're protecting the life of those that they want to, but with no moral basis.
And I hate when they do reproductive rights. Like, they just put everything in a bubble. And
Killing a
I
baby
hate that.
is not the same thing as reproductive.
Yeah,
So it's not. It's two completely different
I
things.
just...
Calling for Bessie McAvery. Bessie McAvery.
And Joyce, you're right. We got to pray for an awakening.
For
I'm
sure.
gonna tell-
For sure.
I want to tell my story about my personal career. I started back in actually 62 in nursing. In 1963, November 22nd, at Parkland Hospital in Dallas, Texas. As many of you know, President Kennedy was in our emergency room. I want to tell you where I was. I was on the third floor of a complicated OB-GYN ward. Abortion was not legal then. Roe v. Wade had not been passed. You know how it was being done then? Because it's been done for history ages. It was just called a DNC. I was the naive nurse who went and gave the pre-op. I took care of that young often minority, low-income patient in a private room. You see, the chief had a private room down the hallway. That was his private room, so he didn't ask any questions, okay? So for the time that I was there and later became head nurse, I was complicit in abortion because I never asked, what was a DNC? Why were those girls down there? Why did they look so terrified? Why did they often hemorrhage after that procedure, okay? I kept that in my heart for many, many, many years, okay? I became involved in the pro-life movement. In 2004, Governor Minner asked me to be on the task force so that I could help prevent what I had been complicit in doing. I wanted to be on the prevention committee so that I could tell the truth about abortion, that it was a risk for breast cancer, that it was a risk for a very premature baby. Because you see, in that cover of DNC,
That is time.
there were Down syndrome babies there. We now have a Down syndrome baby who's Miss Delaware. Look at what all those babies could have become.
Pardon me, that is
Thank you, ma'am.
time.
Thank you.
Moving forward, Ellen, will you please call up 3 names at a time? Also, for members of the public, once you've reached 1 minute, I'm going to hold the orange folder up just so you have about an understanding about how much time you have left to be helpful. Ellen, please call up 3 people call the first name and then 3, the 2 following, so people are ready to go.
Next up is Miss Maria Sheridan. Following her is Miss Donna Latteris and Miss Dorothy J. Urick.
Okay, thank you. My name is Maura Sheridan. I'm the president of Delaware Right to Life. A constitutional amendment to enshrine reproductive freedom is literal overkill in Delaware. The term freedom is a perversion of the word. I think what you really mean is license, which may be defined as freedom to behave as one wishes, especially in a way that results in excessive or unacceptable behavior, and a reason or excuse to do something wrong or excessive. This legislature has already passed a stack of bills making abortion easier to obtain in Delaware than bread at the supermarket. It is time to put the brakes on this type of behavior because this legislature, some people in it, have no concern for what this license has already unleashed. And I'd like to use the example of, many people are unaware that Leroy Brinkley, a rogue abortion clinic owner, has recently opened up a clinic in Delaware outside of Ellesmere. Brinkley hired Kermit Gosnell at his Atlantic Women's Medical Services clinic in Delaware. Gosnell is now in jail, in prison, for murdering late-term babies born alive by snipping their necks. Brinkley got kicked out of Delaware, obviously, where he went to Louisiana and opened up the Delta Clinic where he already had it. He was kicked out of Louisiana for a laundry list of abuses and violations. He simply headed back to Delaware where they welcomed him with open arms and reopened this all-gin clinic on Lancaster Pike in Kirkwood Highway. Where's the oversight? This is what we should be worried about. Where is the oversight? Is he licensed? Is he accredited? You have no concern for what happens after these women have these abortions or during these abortions. You have a rogue nurse practitioner right now mailing out abortion pills to anyone who asks for them from her Newark home. They did an article about her in the News Journal. No oversight, no risk assessment, no medical exam. Pills can be taken off label. This is what you're unleashing.
Thank you. Please remember, you guys can also submit written.
That was a good point about the pills.
Very good point. I would just like to point out that Ms. Bess, Ms. Moira, and the next person or two, I believe, are all DFPC members. Also, after she speaks, I want to make a point about the comments.
Yeah.
My name is Donna Lettieri. I'm not with any company. I'm just a certified concerned citizen. I was looking at your, want to talk to the bill, and they made a lot of the great points that I wanted to make. There's nobody taking away our rights. So there's nobody taking away our right to prenatal care. No abortion center, not even Planned Parenthood, does prenatal care. They've called every one of them across the country. Planned Parenthood does that. They have the right to reproductive freedom. They can sleep with whoever they want. They can do whatever they want. Like they said, the child inside them is not their body. There's no postpartum care at Planned Parenthood. I am on the street every week talking to women who go in and have abortions. And then I've contacted many of them afterwards. When they've talked to me, they've said, Donna, tell my story. One lady, 12 weeks, fully formed, 12 weeks, arms, legs, had that child ripped apart in her womb at Planned Parenthood in Wilmington. They left the baby in her, and she nearly died. Her name is Kyra. I've talked to you about her before, all right? She says, Donna, tell my story. There is no aftercare. When they take the abortion pill, it stops the progesterone. The next day they take the suppository with the misoprostol. If it doesn't work, the baby can stay within them. They can die from sepsis. You know what they're told? Go to the emergency room and tell them you're having a miscarriage. They're lying. You want to codify this as a right? The right to life is there already. And when Roe v. Wade formed its decision, it was based on lies. Doe v. Bolton expanded that, but the Dobbs case recognized the lies that was founded on. Nathanson expanded. He said 98,000 women were dying a year from abortion. And it wasn't true at all. He lied. There's an 8-point fact strategy book.
That is time.
I'll send y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great points being made. I just wanted to bring up some of the things in the comments too. Why it's so important to have a consistent worldview is that the worldview includes the redemption that comes from the gospel when we make these decisions. So just wanted to point that out.
Good afternoon. I'd like to talk about consequences. How can one person decide the fate of another and say it's okay? Everyone involved in a situation is entitled to a say in that decision. Everyone. Full knowledge of the matters concerned is the privilege of any of those involved in the situation that concerns them. All involved have equal rights. Those who cannot understand what is at stake need to be protected from those who would, take advantage of their vulnerability. God gives everyone the right to have a say in what affects them or to have someone speak on their behalf or be a defense when they cannot defend themselves. No one is to be cheated of that right. In the last days, we will all have to answer for our decisions. It will be very difficult for those who have not honored others' rights to be heard to give a reason why they did not do so. Please consider your own position in life and vote no on SB 5. The consequences of your actions will serve as evidence of your integrity. They will serve to decide your position in the next life. Look to your own lives and consider the consequences of making killing legal, of your actions, and what would you have to answer for. It is with a full heart, that I speak out and urge you to vote no today to protect our tomorrows. Thank you for your attention.
Before we hear the next one, I want to say subscribe to the channel
Johnson.
if you're on YouTube for future references. It's always good to have. So if you can see the subscribe button or even like this video, that will be awesome. That will be highly appreciated.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I've lived in Delaware for 53 years and worked at Nanticoke Hospital for 20 years. When I was a teenager, I became pregnant. I was very, very frightened with no hope for my future. Many encouraged me to have an abortion. Modern medicine has overwhelmingly confirmed that an unborn baby is human. Even pro-abortion biologists agree that at the moment of fertilization, an unborn baby has the DNA information to be a human being, and taking the life of a human being is murder and is wrong. Had I taken the lives of my babies, I would not only have murdered my twins, it turned out to be twins, but also my grandchildren, 7 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren, and their future children. Every one touches someone in their journey through life, and my children have touched many. 61 years ago in 1964, I was a very frightened young 17-year-old girl, but I chose to do the right thing. I chose life. I encourage you to do the right thing. Please vote no to Senate Bill 5. Please choose life. Thank you very much for allowing me to say.
That was a lovely.
At this time, can I have the following people line up behind the podium?
I always wonder what they like when they listen. What
goes through their head, for sure.
Senator Townsend, what's going through your mind?
Personal stories are powerful.
Personal stories are powerful.
I also oppose SB 5 for the following reasons. I think we've already heard the Delaware Constitution that begins with, through divine goodness, all people have by nature the rights of, and this is an excerpt, enjoying and defending life and liberty without injury by one to another. And I'm here to speak on behalf of those Delawareans that are unable to speak for themselves, but deserve the right to enjoy life through the protection of our state constitution. And I'm just going to share with you a picture of this. This is one Delawarean, same person. This is at what you would describe as viability, or just the 24 weeks. And then also another Delawarean that is alive today. And I think we've said this quite often, that as you look at these lives, I'm here to speak for them because they're not in the room, but that's what we're talking about, is these children and these lives. And so, as we described as well, that we protected the life of criminals through the prohibition of the death penalty. I ask that you afford the same protection of life for the most innocent in our state. And based on the DHSS data, 1 out of every 6 reported pregnancy ends in death of a child. 2,445 children in 2022, the #1 cause of death in Delaware, where you're stopping a beating heart. If this committee finds the decline of cats cruel to animals, please recognize the cruelty to human life that you are sponsoring. Every Delawarean deserves the right to life, and please vote no on SB 5. Thank you.
Mr. Amayo, before you start, I would like to call down Judy Tapkin, Marsha Lee, and Edward Long.
Please come up to the podium and form a line. We're trying to make sure that we preserve as many minutes as we can. So if your name was just called, please come form a line so that you're prepared to speak next. Thank you.
Larry Mayo, president of Institute on the Constitution and author of the only comprehensive study of the Delaware State Constitution. Senators, what you're about to do is a perversion of the Delaware State Constitution. Article 1 is our Bill of Rights. I believe that's where this right is supposed to be put into the Constitution. Well, Article 1 is a result of the Declaration of Rights of 1776, which was supposed to be permanent and unamendable, which is an extension of the list of rights found in the Declaration of Independence, which is in U.S. Code, the organic law of the land. The list is life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That has been extended at the state level because it precedes the U.S. Constitution with rights that were created by our Creator, not our government. Article 1 ends with, just so you're clear on this, we declare that everything in this article, that's Article 1, is reserved out of the general powers of government hereinafter mentioned, which is the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. So a right, if you want to call it a right, created by the legislature does not belong in Article 1 because those rights were created by our Creator. And actually, every one of them can be found in Scripture. Now, the only other place in the
Mr.
Constitution
Mayo, that is time.
where it may go is Article 15, which was repealed.
That is
because
time.
there's no
Thank
help.
you.
You may submit the rest of your comments written. Come on up. Thank you.
Calling up next, Ms. Judy Tapkin.
Hi, my name is Judy Tapkin, and I'm here to testify in opposition to Bill SB 5, Sex Without Responsibility Act. I'm a 73-year-old wife, mom, and grandmom, better known as mom, to my husband's 8 3/4 grandchildren. Our 9th granddaughter is due in May. But I'm also a grandmother to 2 more grandchildren that I've never had the blessing to meet, hold, snuggle, or love on. These 2 babies would be in their middle to late 20s now, and part of our family had not been aborted. I saw the terrible effects that the choice to abort has had on my loved one, how alcohol became the drug of choice to deaden the horrific memories that abortion left. Delaware already has limitless abortions and now also feels the need to make it a constitutional right for the mother. So in my mind, I am not able to understand the total lack of any constitutional right for an infant up to the point of birth. Through ultrasounds, we are now able to see they are human beings, and yet they are being denied any rights to their very life, meaning they have 0 constitutional rights in Delaware. Maybe your family hasn't had to live through the aftermath of an abortion, so you only see it through a clouded lens. I don't want to assume that everyone is aware of how barbaric an abortion procedure is. Suction is used to tear the baby apart, and then after the abortion, they have to account for all the body parts to make sure none are left behind for the health of the mother. I pray my testimony will help you to see more clearly the catastrophic long-term effects abortion has, not just on the woman and her family, but even more, the destruction of a human life. Thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Another great testimony.
Very good so far.
Wow.
Amazing points.
Good morning.
being made.
My name is Marcia Lees. I wanted to thank you for letting us be here to speak to this matter. Of the international community of biologists, 96% agree that life begins at conception. So abortion is the taking of a human life, i.e. murder. Why are you once again trying to make murder more legal in Delaware? With 18 methods of birth control available, why are you treating abortion as another method? Personal responsibility barely exists in our culture. Two people engage in sex, creating a new life. A new life. At that point, a woman consents to the process. The product is not at fault and should not be eliminated. Thank you so much for your time. Please do not do this.
While he's coming up, Ellen, can you call the next three?
If the following three people can come and line up. Martin Maddox.
If they will only know how much destruction this brings to the state, it just...
Yeah. For sure.
My name is Edward Long. I'm against SB 5. God gave us intelligence and choice. We know the consequences while we continue to do our actions. An innocent human being, a result of sex, should not pay the price for people not taking the responsibility of their actions. Abortion is not health care, but the opposite. Healing is for fixing hurt, illness, or something wrong. Abortion is not one of those. Cutting off part of yourself because you did something wrong would be considered insane by most. States encourage vaccines to prevent harm. Why allow harm to the unborn? We have friends with a son who's on the high end of autism that they would not give up for anything. In fact, he prayed for a sibling with his mom on an IUD. Guess what? His sister turned 1 year old in November. Our son and his wife had a similar happen because she missed an implant appointment. Another blessing, not a mistake. Thinking you have all the freedom with consequences only to others is like continually driving drunk, high, or never stopping. It isn't logical. You drive with consequences and you are responsible to deal with the results of your actions. Why should any part of your life be any different? Thank you for your time.
That's the sex without responsibility point right there. You know what the action is. You know there's going to be a baby, so there's responsibility to protect life.
DTI project manager. Thank you for serving in state government. I'm testifying in opposition to SB 5. My prayer is that your votes on SB 5 are guided by what King Solomon called the beginning of wisdom, which is the fear of the Lord. For centuries, strong families and a commitment to life and liberty have been what caused Delaware to thrive. But King David foresaw a time when, in limited human wisdom, cultures would want to throw off moral restraint. They seek for liberation, but they plot their own destruction. For they don't worship the Lord with reverence, nor pay homage to God's Son. The Son who said he came that we would have life more abundantly, human flourishing. But it is the thief who comes to rob, kill, and destroy. Likewise, the prophet Isaiah warned of those who would intentionally call evil good and good evil. God spoke to Jeremiah and told him he knew him before he was conceived in the womb, and he called him before he was born. Life is sacred. We are made in God's image. It is morally wrong and fundamentally un-American to deny an entire class of human beings, the preborn, the right to life. Protecting adults' desires to have sex without responsibility at the expense of the children who are created from that act has no place in our Constitution. My prayer is that God will open our eyes to the spiritual forces that are behind this issue, and that true good, protection of the unborn, will prevail. Thank you.
That was an excellent way of explaining the worldview behind this issue. And that's the blessing of this bill, is we have the opportunity to do that, to take everyone back to the very beginning.
Three on standby.
And explain the
Hope
worldview
Wally,
behind all of these issues.
Jenny Hauser,
very clear
and Marcy Scott.
message.
Yeah.
Well prepared. Everybody, I mean, I just want to point out how many DFPC
members are testifying.
It's amazing.
Yeah, very
My
encouraging.
name is Hope Whaley. I'm a Delaware citizen and taxpayer, and I stand before you today in strong opposition to Senate Bill 5. In my view, this is the most egregious piece of legislation that has come before this General Assembly for consideration. Since the focus today is on reproductive freedom, which women already have in Delaware, My comments address the elephant in the room disregarded by sponsors and supporters of this bill, and that is the innocent unborn child. Today, I give voice to the most vulnerable among us who have no voice. The womb, which should be the safest haven and refuge for the unborn, has all too often become a war zone of survival, with a child struggling to survive against a strong force of a suction curette, being brutally dismembered and suctioned. What have we become as a people to not only allow this procedure, but even to proudly promote it as a campaign call to action for votes, which Delaware candidates have done? Have we no shame? It is a felony in Delaware to intentionally kill or cause serious injury to an animal, but yet a human in the womb can be legally killed. Isn't a human being made in the image of its creator not of greater value than an animal? Let's call this bill what it really is: child sacrifice on the altar of convenience, no matter what. Who are we to deny an unborn child their constitutional rights and their right to fulfill their purpose given by our Creator, and all in the name of reproductive freedom? President Ronald Reagan once said, "I've noticed that everybody that is for abortion has already been born." Let that sink in for a minute. Thank you.
The compelling point about this issue is the fact
My name
that
is Jenny
you can't
Hauser,
protect
and I'm
life.
testifying in opposition
Let's listen to her
SB
first, and I'll
5.
continue.
This bill
Jenny.
includes a list of
She's good.
examples of matters related to pregnancy, and I appreciate those who have spoken about the abortion aspect of it. But another one of these is infertility care. This would include IVF, an industry that is largely unregulated in the U.S. We think of IVF, as mentioned here, as being used by infertile couples who want to have a baby. Any individual, though, with enough money can buy eggs and sperm and use a surrogate to get a baby. Anyone who wants to adopt a baby has to go through a rigorous vetting process. With IVF, there is no vetting process. There are documented cases of pedophiles obtaining children through surrogacy. Even in less extreme scenarios, IVF allows adults to put their wants ahead of children's needs by utilizing egg or sperm donation to deliberately create children who will grow up without a mother or without a father. We would all agree that we should protect children. SB 5 does the opposite on multiple levels. Thank you.
Great points raised.
Very good.
Wow.
Not often addressed, but needs to be. Yes, human rights. If you're saying you protect human rights, you have to protect it comprehensively, and they're all bringing that out very well.
Nancy Randolph and Frank Gothard.
Nancy Randolph.
May I start by saying I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and in Jesus Christ, his only Son. And I also wanted to testify today because I happen to be a person who had one of those inconvenient pregnancies. When I went to the infirmary at the University of Delaware, I was a junior in the College of Nursing. And the first thing that I was asked was, when I told them I thought I was pregnant, do you want an abortion? Nothing like the suggestion, but the power of suggestion. But because I am a Christian, I knew that God is the only one who can create life. Man can take a sperm and an egg and put them together, and then freeze dry it, which already, there you go, and you come out and you have a viable egg. So that's when it starts. That's when human life starts. You can take that egg and you can put it, if you put it in the proper place, it comes out a human being. Man cannot do that. He cannot make life. Only God can give life. And so therefore, as a person, I know, and I'll tell you, I was a junior in the College of Nursing. I didn't even want to have kids. I wanted to have a career. But because of my faith, I made the decision to have my child. She was the light of my life. Within 2 weeks, I couldn't imagine life without her. She has taught me so much. And after I had my son, I did family daycare. Because, you know, little people are really fascinating things. That's just it. A lot of times, a woman who goes to get an abortion is confused. The woman doesn't really know what she wants. And the
That's
power
time.
of
Thank you.
suggestion is so.
That is time.
Thank you. You can submit the rest of your comments written. Come on up.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak in this place. I stand in opposition to SB 5. I've been in this hall too many times, but never once in my life did I think I'd be here to defend the rights of the unborn. Thousands of years ago, Jeremiah had a conversation with God, and God told him that he knew him before he was in his mother's womb. Jeremiah existed before he was in his mother's womb, and God told him that he had planned his days. He had numbered his days. For lack of time, I'm not going to read that to you, but I am going to read this, what David said about his early life. And he's having a conversation with God as well. He said, "For you formed my inward parts, you wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the depths of the earth. Your eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in your book were all written the days that were ordained for me." Our days are numbered, folks. God did that for each and every one of us. And who are we to usurp God's authority?
Excuse me, that is time.
And cut that short?
Thank you.
What was that?
Thank you.
In the preamble of the Delaware Constitution says...
Sir, your time is complete. Thank you.
I'm sorry?
Your time is up.
I'm done.
I told you a couple times, yes. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Nandi Randolph, Policy Analyst for Delaware Family Policy Council, and we stand in strong opposition to SB 5. This amendment is a dangerous overreach that would enshrine unrestricted abortion and sterilization into our state's constitution, stripping away even the most basic protections for the vulnerable. It prioritizes radical autonomy over parental rights, medical ethics, and human dignity. God's word is clear. Life is sacred. Psalm 139 tells us that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, knit together in the womb by our Creator. Yet SB 5 would erase protections for the unborn and could allow minors to undergo sterilization without parental involvement, undermining God's design for family authority. Government exists to uphold justice and defend the innocent, as Romans 13 commands, but this bill does the opposite. Isaiah 10 warns against unjust laws that deprive the vulnerable of their rights. This amendment does exactly that. SB 5 could eliminate parental notification laws, strip conscious protections from medical professionals, and prevent safeguards against irreversible procedures on minors. Instead of protecting life, it codifies its destruction. We must build a culture of life, not destroy it. I urge you to reject this dangerous amendment. Please vote no on SB 5. Thank you.
That was very good.
On point.
Calling the next three on standby.
Well done, Nandi.
Kathy Kelly, Joy Hill, and Herbert Cleveland.
Start. Thank you. My name is Frank Geringer. I appreciate the chance to be here today. I think we should just be reasonable. I mean, let us come together and reason with our intellect. We're really talking about murder here, the killing of innocent children. The word viability has been used quite a bit this morning. And I don't know what your definition of that is, but I can tell you from a quick experience that I had, and I appreciate you, Senator, talking about how you held or are holding your brand new grandchild. Holding a baby is a beautiful thing. I have several children. My wife and I were expecting years ago a child, and he died in the womb. He was stillborn, and I saw his body in front of me. And 5 years later, after 2 more children, 5 years later, it happened a second time. And I said, I'm not going to allow this to go without spending time with my daughter. She was 20 weeks in the womb. I held her in my hand. Her head was here, her feet were here. She was no longer than 3 to 4 inches. I studied the eyelashes, her eyebrows. I could see the cuticles in her fingernails. This was a living being. This was a human being. And this is what's being taken from moms. And it's absolutely insanity to me. And it's evil. And it's conjured up in the depths of evil. The prevailing view of our community, I don't think, stands for abortion. Just in this community right here, these speakers here, I've counted 16 to 1, 16 opposing this bill. So I'm number 17. I stand in absolute opposition of this bill. I would like to suggest that instead of this bill, we scrap this bill and we start a new bill. Let's be first. Let's make Delaware great again. Let's be the first state. Let's be the first state together that protects the innocent life. Let's codify that into the Constitution. Let's be the first state that will provide true health care for moms. How about we have a bill that helps fund the crisis pregnancy centers in the state? I know Planned Parenthood is basically a money-making project. Thank you very much.
There was a lot said there.
Yeah.
But he was right. I've only heard one in opposition to Senate Bill 5.
Again, I would like to call up Kathy Kelly, Joy Hill, and Herbert.
One that has a bit of personal gain from it.
Planned Parenthood, yes.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, Lord, now and forever. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm Claire Kelly. I am here with compassion as a voice for the voiceless, including the unborn and the vulnerable mothers and the families betrayed by deception of abortion. Life begins at conception. Abortion is murder, not health care. The abuse and disrespect of God-given life is what leads to abortion. How is it reproductive freedom when you literally are killing what you reproduce? It's reproductive murder. Abortion is the leading cause of death, the only surgery intended to kill, and only deemed successful if the baby is dead. People don't need more reproductive freedom. They need to take responsibility for their actions, not murder an innocent baby to avoid dealing with the consequence of their irresponsibility. If you partake in the Holocaust and merciless murder of the most innocent, you are guilty of murder. What will you say to Jesus someday if he asks you, why is the blood of my innocent children dripping from your hands? Thanks so much.
What I love too about these last two testimonies is they were, particularly the second to last one, projecting a positive view of what we could do. We could be protecting children.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Katie Kelly. I'm a policy counsel attorney with Americans United for Life. I respectfully request this committee reject Senate Bill 5, specifically because of the abortion provision. I'll try not to repeat what everyone against this bill has already said, but just to reiterate, abortion is fundamentally different from the other matters at issue in this bill, which, Senator, as you referenced earlier, seem like perfectly good things to protect that are important. But abortion terminates a preborn child. And so of particular concern, Senate Bill 5 overrides Delaware's current common sense regulations on post-viability, medically necessary interventions to save the life or health of the mother. This will, in effect, create a fundamental right to a lower standard of care for women, which actually endangers women's health and safety. Specifically, Senate Bill 5 creates a fundamental right to post-viability abortions that are medically indicated instead of medically necessary. And the bill also creates a fundamental right to post-viability abortions that only require a physician's professional judgment instead of a physician's good faith medical judgment. And in my written testimony that will be circulated later, I discuss in detail the statute explaining how this is different and it's a different standard of care. It may not sound significant, but whether a procedure is medically indicated versus medically necessary is in fact a different standard of care. And the requirement of good faith medical judgment versus mere professional judgment is also a different standard of care. Further, under Delaware's current law regarding post-viability medically necessary interventions, in the case of a potentially fatal fetal abnormality, the physician must consider the survivability of the preborn child. But Senate Bill 5 makes no mention of these issues regarding potentially fatal fetal abnormalities.
That is time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Calling up and cue Simone Silver and Joe Fitzgerald.
Hi there. My name's Joy Hill, and I just want to share with you today that most of what's been said I confer with, especially the testimony of Senator Lawson and Senator Richardson. I love the part that Senator Lawson brought up about the importance of the father and the child having reproductive rights. Senate Bill 5 actually says, the language says, every individual has a fundamental right to reproductive freedom. But I don't see that as the case. I don't see that as a honest statement. It should say women have the right because the man and the child are being denied their rights. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a pastor in Sussex County. I'm a chaplain. I work within the business community. I minister to and help people in businesses, and they many times tell me about their experiences, their life experiences, things that have caused stress in their life and continuing problems that they face. Many women I encounter have been forced to have an abortion by their parents, a controlling spouse, a boyfriend, and they were put into a position where they really didn't have the freedom to make their decision. This has caused them a lifelong trauma, pain, and suffering. I do not see where putting abortion in our Constitution is going to be able to cause them any freedom. In fact, I see abortion causing bondage, pain, and suffering for many women. Thank you for your time.
I'm Herb Clendaniel, distinguished senators. I look around this room today, and I look for John the Baptist to be the voice of one crying in the wilderness, but I don't see him. So it's up to us. I'm just a citizen, and I say no. I'm not going to quote any Bible scriptures to you because it's obvious you don't believe in God if you want to kill all the babies. But be careful, because you'll find yourself fighting against the very God that you're trying to fight against. Be careful. God is God, and we're not.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Senate Health and Social Services Committee. My name is Simone Silver, the Manager in State Policy and Advocacy Chair for Christiana Care, and I'm giving comments today in support of Senate Bill 5. We greatly appreciate your leadership in sponsoring this important legislation to ensure the right to reproductive freedom for all individuals. This legislation is crucial for safeguarding the fundamental rights of Delawareans to make autonomous decisions regarding their reproductive health. At Christiana, we're fully committed to reproductive health care services. Our overall goal is to end health disparities and achieve health equity. That cannot be achieved without ensuring true access and equal access to all aspects of health care, including decisions about one's own reproductive health. Thank you for your commitment to health equity, reproductive health care services, and ensuring that protections are in place for the rights and freedoms of all Delawareans.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Joe Fitzgerald. I'm here on behalf of the Catholic Diocese of Wilmington to express opposition to Senate Bill 5. The Catholic Church's opposition is well known to all here and long established, finding its earliest expression in the 1st century AD, or rather the underlying teaching for their opposition. And, you know, the diocese and the church would urge members of the committee not to release the bill and will oppose this legislation should it gain release. Thank you.
This is our last in-person comment before we go into our virtual.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Dr. Joseph Schrand. I'm a retired neurologist, speaking for myself. I note that Senate Bill 5, the attempt to change the Constitution is rather difficult. It involves two separate passes through committee on both sides. Why is this? It must be that framers of the Constitution wanted to make very sure that any alteration to the Constitution was truly the will of the people. This proposed amendment is not the will of the people. That's very clear from just listening to the testimony we've already heard. Now, clearly, citizens have differing views on abortion. But polling data shows very clearly two things. First, the majority want to retain parental involvement in any decision of a serious nature like this. The majority also want the regulation of late-term abortion. These concerns are not at all reflected in Senate Bill 5, so I would encourage you to reject this. Thanks very much.
That concludes public
They're going to go to comments, but I will say 22-2.
22 in support. I was just listening to all of the comments that were, I'm saying in support of life, in opposition to Senate Bill 5. It's an excellent education that was happening there in terms of why it's important to protect life and the hypocrisy of the consequences that happen when we don't.
You can unmute yourself and speak. I do not
There you
have
go.
anything to say at this moment. Thank you.
Okay, never mind.
And also the fact that any of you can do this. You
Yeah.
can go, show up, speak for 2 minutes, practice ahead of time. Nandi does a good job of helping people to review their testimonies, which is I would encourage you to do so you can make sure that you're succinct and to the point. But any of you guys can do this, and it's an opportunity for you to advance the truth, which we saw happening today.
Opportunity to testify in support of SB 5 on behalf of the League of Women Voters, and to the senator for mentioning our testimony early in today's session. I think we've seen today that the reminder that so many aspects of reproductive health are lightning rod issues for people. And one of the wise things that the sponsors of this bill did was to enshrine the right within the Constitution so that women and their partners who are faced with the really difficult choices that you have to make when you're building your family don't have to make those choices uncertain about what the state of the law is going to be. And for, that is another reason that we support SB 5, and we support stabilizing the right to reproductive health in the Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Christopher Rowe.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me here. My curiosity is in the actual language of Senate Bill 5. in that Senate Bill 5 discusses reproductive rights. I am the vice president of the Institute on the Constitution, and I work with Larry Mayo often. I just want to convey that we teach in the Constitution, we go back to actually Webster's 1828 dictionary, so that our students understand what the intent of the founders are. And I'm trying to understand the intent of SB 5. We've discussed abortion here, but nowhere in the title of this Senate bill is abortion mentioned. What is mentioned is reproduction. And if we go to the dictionary says the process by which plants and animals give rise to offspring. Well, what we're doing here is the exact 180-degree opposite of this. So I'm trying to understand the English language, which seems to be put into legalese in this case. And it's not surprising considering the source and author of the bill. So that's my curiosity. Why do we not speak plainly in English language so the people can understand and not be hornswoggled by people who think they're smarter than the people? Thank you.
We see that playing of language all the time.
Mm-hmm. Euphemisms.
Yeah, you see that in the assisted suicide. No, it's not suicide. Is end of life or right to end of life.
That's why listening to these are so important, because you can hear the words that are used and then hear how they're actually intended, what the meaning is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And members of the Delaware Senate and Health and Social Services Committee. I am a certified nurse practitioner and advocacy chairperson of the Delaware Coalition of Nurse Practitioners. We're testifying in support of SB 5. Nurse practitioners are committed to providing respectful, compassionate, and evidence-based patient-centered care. We stand firmly in support of reproductive freedoms, including the right of the patient to make informed decisions about contraception, pregnancy, and abortion without legislative interference. Access to comprehensive reproductive health care is essential for the well-being of individuals, family, and communities. With the support of Delaware's lawmakers, we have made great strides in achieving reproductive rights in the past years. As nurse practitioners, we advocate for legislation that provides continuing protection of these rights, especially patients' rights, ensuring that all patients, regardless of location, socioeconomic status, or background, can make safe, legal, and high-quality reproductive choices. We call on our policymakers to codify these freedoms, protecting the rights of patients, trusting them to work with their healthcare providers to make the best decisions for their own health. The Delaware Coalition of Nurse Practitioners thanks you and requests that you release SB 5. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Karen Knight.
Yes, I am Karen Knight from Millsboro, Delaware, speaking in opposition to SB 5. For me, the question comes down to this. What is the consequence of throwing away that which is considered inconvenient? If this bill goes into the Constitution, taking the lives of inconvenient babies, what will come next? Give some consideration, please, to what it would be like if the elderly, or perhaps those born with defects, or those who struggle with life issues, are they to be next to be stripped of their lives because they are considered inconvenient? Our Creator God has a purpose for each person who is given life. It seems selfish for those to put forward this bill for political gain, to think that their needs are greater than the purposes of our Creator God. So I ask you, please do not allow Delaware to become a state with no conscience, turning a blind eye to the suffering of those who are thought to be inconvenient. This is selfishness at its ugliest, and it is not worthy of the state of Delaware. Thank you so much for listening.
Very long.
My name is Sherry Long. The sponsor said that we want to, quote unquote, make sure as strongly as possible to ensure that these fundamental rights may not be taken away. So I have a question for the sponsor and or any male representative who will vote on this piece of legislation. Would it be okay with you if your wife would have aborted your beautiful children? What happened to the father's rights? Does the father have rights? What if he wants children? To reiterate, SB 5 says everyone has reproductive rights, and your own testimony in and itself is disingenuous, as it doesn't include all. Please vote no, SB 5.
Matthew Morris.
Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Morris, and I'd like to thank Madam Chair and esteemed colleagues. I present today to address the flaws in Senate Bill 5 proposed constitutional amendment. Its vagueness risks the undermining of its intent. The language allows post-viability abortions when medically indicated to protect the life or physical or mental health of the pregnant individual. It sounds compassionate, but it's a blank check. What exactly does medically indicated mean? Imminent danger or a doctor's hunch? Mental health could span from severe psychosis to everyday stress. Where's the line? Where do we draw that line? And professional judgment of one healthcare provider unchecked invites inconsistency. Will it be an OBGYN or a counselor? One opinion or two? This vagueness of the bill opens the doors to overuse and even misuse. Abortion at 24 weeks plus for subjective reasons or underuse, with the doctors paralyzed by legal fear. Other states demand imminent risk or serious impairment for clarity. We need that here. Specific thresholds, not ambiguity. I urge you all to redefine the language, and I am by no means opposing or undermining a woman's right to reproductive rights and or health, whereas I would not want the state governing what I choose to do with my own body. However, we must protect health without sacrificing precision. Delaware deserves a law that's clear and not a gamble.
Thank you. Your time has elapsed. Last public comment, Joe F.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I might be in an extreme minority here because I support the opposition against the bill, but I am a former, in fact, anti-theist, currently envious of those with theology and seeking it myself. I still to this day entertain in the prose of the great Christopher Hitchens, even though I find now some of his positions morally reprehensible. But so I'll start with the linguistics in law. So homicide is, by definition, a person taking another person's life. In law in Delaware, the unborn life is completely omitted. So some states have additional, a pregnant woman gets murdered, there's 2 cases of homicide there. Delaware does not have that protection, nor does it have the protection against fetal abduction. So I don't know if it's with intent or just by omission that the unborn life is not protected. So at least you have this going for you. It is consistent with current Delaware law, but that does not overcome the ethical concerns. The term birth control was coined by Margaret Sanger. It was the name of her publication. She was considering race control, population control, birth rate control before she decided on birth control. And we see that it's been effective at race control with, her Negro project. The result of that is there's a 6 times black babies are murdered at 6 times the rate in utero than white.
Hugh, your time has elapsed. Apologies, seeing one more hand. Brent Burge.
Thank you. Reproductive freedom is the euphemism that's used to describe abortion. It's a very contentious issue with many citizens of Delaware, and many of us believe that the state should seek to protect life rather than sanction the murder of unborn children. These children are unique individuals with unique DNA and deserve the protection of our society. As drafted, this amendment effectively allows abortion at any time throughout the term of pregnancy. subject only to the professional judgment of a healthcare professional. That it is medically indicated to protect life, physical, or mental health of the pregnant individual. This is a very low bar, as pregnancy is inherently stressful. I note that the amendment also cites the right of every individual, absent any qualifying age. This would apply to children and minors. I urge you to not release this proposed constitutional amendment from the committee. Thank you.
At this time, there's no more public comment.
Thank you, Wyatt. Thank you, senators, for your time in the committee today. Before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I neglected to approve our minutes, so I would take a motion regarding the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second. So moved. Thank you, and I appreciate everyone's time and participation in the committee hearing today. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Adjourned.
All right.
Well,
there's a lot to unpack there.
For sure. And just really quick, so I know some of you are asking or probably wondering about the vote. So the way it works in the Senate is that the bill is sent around for signatures, and the Senate will sign for or against, and then it'll be on the website what the vote is. So stay tuned. Watch your inboxes, and we'll update you on that.
I wish it will vote like they do in the House, so people will actually see.
Yes. It provides another layer of accountability, I think.
I really don't like that when they do that in this set. Now, just as a count, we see 21 in person in opposition testimonies, 2 in favor, which is huge.
Mm-hmm. And the 2 in favor were Planned Parenthood and Christiana
They
Care.
have some sort of a business going on. And then in online, I counted 2 in favor, maybe 2.5. I don't know. There was that one that they caught. And then 6 online, which is great. That was really good.
Just a couple of summary points, I guess, of some of the things that were brought up. And I have a lot of notes here. I'm not going to get to all of them, but I just wanted to reiterate again. And in light of, I thought the person who spoke who said that he was atheist, I was so sad they cut him off because he was about to make a really powerful point. And I think he did, even though they cut him off. But he was talking about the eugenics of Margaret Sanger and how that is actually what started Planned Parenthood. She is the founder of Planned Parenthood, and her goal was to reduce the birth rate of minority communities. So she had, and it's interesting because in all of the pro SB5 testimonies planned from Planned Parenthood, from Christiana Care, they were talking about how abortion care needed to be made available to those in minority communities and low-income communities. And the way they present it is supposed to be a positive thing. But when we look at the origin of Planned Parenthood, we see that it has a eugenics root. It's not a positive thing. It was intended, again, from the roots of Planned Parenthood to reduce the birth rate of people in these communities. So it's actually a negative thing.
And then it kept changing, right? That's what he said. Like the names kept changing, the description kept changing. Today, reproductive rights.
Right. It's the language isn't clear.
Yeah.
And that's by intention. It's when language is not clear, then it's easy to avoid the uncomfortable truth of the fact that you're taking human life and saying that it's a right. You have the right to take human life, innocent human life. So I think that one of the things that we saw today is that worldview matters. And a lot of times people will hold on to the symptoms of a worldview without recognizing where it comes from. So there's a lot of people, for example, our atheist friend who testified, I say friend, I'm not sure who he is, but thank you for testifying, whoever you were. But he highlighted, recognized the fact that taking human life is inherently problematic. I wonder what his answer would be to the question of why. Why is that the case? What makes human life valuable? Why do we believe that human life needs to be protected in law? Because as a lot of the earlier testimonies pointed out, the reason for that is because we believe we're created in God's image. And so if you don't have that foundation, the question is, why do we believe human life should be protected in the first place? So I think that was something that was brought out. I think the fact that we have people from the community coming and giving their stories and the power of those stories is just so impactful, because when you hear a person's real life personal experience with the issue of abortion, it demonstrates from a more emotional point of view the opposition to the narrative that's presented in the media, that abortion solves a problem, that there's no problems that come after that. But you see, there's real pain, there's real heartache, there's real hurt in the family when abortion is happening. And so I think those stories are really powerful. Just an encouragement to you all. Thank you for tuning in, by the way. Thank you for listening and watching that committee along with us. Again, this was our first live stream, and it was nice to be able to watch it with you all instead of just on our own, and hearing the comments and seeing the interactions. That was really encouraging. So thank you for all of that. Thank you for your encouragement, your prayers. I see that a lot of you in the chat recognize the need for prayer for our legislators, for the people who are testifying, for our state, and it's such a big deal. Yes, they do need our prayers. So thank you for that. Again, testimony and testifying is a powerful way to advance the truth. And I was really encouraged by the fact that the overwhelming majority of the testimonies were in support of life today. So this is a terrible amendment, no doubt, but look at the blessing in it, in that it gives us the opportunity to advance truth. And it actually gives us the responsibility to do it as well.
So we have a few phone calls that we want to do with you guys. One of them, wanted to talk a bit to Senator Boxon, see what his intake was. So we're going to give him a little bit of a call. Hopefully he'll pick up. Just wanted to see what the temperature in the room was. Just knowing that they have so many people testifying, that was pretty cool. So that's calling. There you go. So hopefully he pick up, and yeah, just want to see what the temperature in that room was. I love every time that a lot of people just come.
And I'll get back to you.
Oh, he'll get back to me. He'll call me back. I won't call him. He's probably talking to the other senators.
Yeah, he probably has some conversations there. But yes, it was.
And I think that also they call out, if you're part of a church, we need to get your church involved. Praying is starting to pray. We have the Tenacious Prayer Warriors, which we're calling out the churches to pray for their elected officials. So if you are a part of a church, you need to get connected with your pastor. We need to get connected with the pastor if they're not.
Yes.
And then, we need to have that voice. As we always say, and I have learned this, we can't expect government to be an institution of transformation. And also think about the institution of government. If the institution of government could be the institution that, how can I put it this way, will spread sin like no other institution. Compared to, obviously, the institution of the church, who is called to be the institution of transformation. But if the institution of government, when they do a bill like this one, spreads sin over the land like no other institution can. Isn't that crazy?
That is interesting.
That's why it's so important for us as a church to engage in the mission field of government for the advancement of God's kingdom. And God's kingdom, we heard today, before I was formed, you in the womb, you already knew me. Before I was born, you knew who I was. This is Jeremiah 1:5.
Yeah.
And we serve a God that is, God starts and ends. Life starts and ends in God. There's no other way.
And the issue of life is a theological issue. It's not a political issue. It's not a government issue. It's a theological issue. As I think it was Nandi who pointed out, government was instituted to protect life, right? But the questions surrounding why we protect life, that's the church's jurisdiction. And it's the church's responsibility to make sure that the people sitting in those pews understand. And that the people that come to them with questions, they'll be able to respond and give those answers and give those passages in scripture that explain why life is sacred, why we believe that human life should be protected.
So those that are listening, thank you so much for being here. But I hope you already send that message to your elected official.
Yes.
Just get involved. We need to really put the word out there of what is happening. I was talking to a lot of people yesterday, even at church. We had a small group last night, and I mentioned what was happening at Legislative Hall today, and they were shocked. A lot of them were uninformed, And then a lot of them kind of like, well, it's what is it? They said it's an amendment to the Constitution, which like it takes 2 sessions to do it. Like a lot of people think like, oh, we have time. You can't relax, and issues like this, you can't relax because that's what they do.
Right, absolutely. And these things take time. Conversations like this take time to cement in the hearts and minds of people. So I look at it as we have the opportunity to, for 4 years, educate our backyard about the issue of abortion. If this bill were to go all the way through the process, we have that 4-year window where we have this open door opportunity to say, hey, this is a bill. It's happening right now. What do you know about this issue? Let me tell you about the value of life. So let's not sit back. Let's get in the fight now.
We can't sit back. We
Right.
can't sit back. I'm telling you, we'll see over again all this stuff happening so quick at Legislative Hall that we need to be proactive. If you have not gone to the website, I'm sure many of you already have. It's so important for you just to go learn. Where was what's it for all the bills that are coming up?
So for all of the bills, it's delawarefamilies.org/updates. For this bill in particular, to contact your legislator, it's /protect life. And also I'll mention there were a lot of arguments that were brought up today in regards to, for example, earlier on in the committee, there was a point brought up about the issue of rape and incest. There's issues about the health of the mother. Those phrases were brought up. If you go to this URL, /protectlife, delawarefamilies.org, you'll scroll down below the form to contact your senator. You'll see a lot of resources that'll help you to answer questions like these. There are national organizations like Live Action, for example, like the Equipped for Life Institute, that has short video clips that will help you to respond to arguments like these. I would highly encourage you to check those out. It'll help you to have those conversations and answer those questions. We weren't able to cover everything today, but there are a lot of little things that were brought up that I believe if you go to that page, it'll equip you to answer questions like that.
So we're going to try to give a call to Nandi.
Okay, yes.
To see, I know she says she's almost at her car. Hopefully she's able to pick up. And I'm interested to see what was the temperature in the room.
Yes, that would be great to hear from Nandi. She did a great job.
Oh, she did a fantastic job. Just setting up all the testimonies, and it was so clear the work that she's been doing for so long. Mm-hmm. If I need to learn anything about a bill, there's nobody better than her. Yes. I have to say, who understands the language, who understands what the intentions are. Hello, Nandi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Thank you so much for taking our call. I'm right here with India. We have about 20-something people online. So we're eager to hear how was the temperature at Legislative Hall?
The temperature was unlike what I've seen in a very long time in the legislature. The first thing I'd like to point out is that so many were there representing for life.
Yes.
We had about 25, 26 people speaking in comparison to the 4 or 5 that were standing against. Mm-hmm. And it was a wonderful, strong showing, which was beautiful to see. So many people coming at it from a biblical understanding, recognizing that life is sacred because we're made in the image of God. Mm-hmm. And doing so, using different verses, just showing how much of Scripture has makes that exact point, was beautiful.
So we saw, we heard a lot of testimonies that were really effective, but we heard some testimony, even though they were in favor of what our cause is or in opposition of the bill, but did not seem so effective. What would be, for those that are listening, obviously come to you, but what makes a very good, effective testimony at Legislative Hall in a bill like this one?
Well, that's a great question. Something that helps to be effective is one to actually be able to stay within your time frame, to be very clear and have very specific points that you're pointing to within the bill or within some sort of, even if you're pointing to Scripture, have very specific points that you're making. Mm-hmm. Also being accusatory and standing strong. Anytime that you present your testimony in a way that's kind of questioning, well, I'm not quite sure, this may not be the case, then you are watering down the truth that you're standing on. And it's much harder for people to receive it, and they automatically will write you off.
Yeah. Also, a lot of personal stories were really important. We heard some testimonies of people that have gone through really tough situations in life that were affected, and that was very powerful. I don't know how an elected official can sit there and just not be moved. Honestly.
Yeah, there were quite a few personal testimonies from those who either experienced abortion themselves, or even some. There was even testimony from those who were complicit in the process of abortion.
Yep.
Yeah.
And even that is a powerful testimony, having the understanding of exactly what the procedure does, what it looks like, and having been a part of it, but now understanding and being awakened to the realities and being able to stand on that truth. That's a very powerful testimony to present.
Right. Absolutely.
Something else that I think is very interesting from the hearing, the very first person to speak was the current director of Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
She got up to speak, and everyone was supposed to be limited to 2 minutes, but they let her continue on.
That's what we thought. That's what we thought too. Yeah.
Spoke for at least 4 or 5 minutes, and in the back, because of course the sergeant of arms, made some points very clear beforehand about decorum, not speaking out of turn. So no one is, saying anything, but we're all trying to silently nudge, hey, she's going over. And then I was sitting right behind one of the senators and tried to get his attention. And then he says, it's supposed to be 2 minutes, right? And I said, yes, it's been over 2 minutes. And so then he makes a motion to the chair to say, kind of gets her attention a little bit, still, again, trying to follow decorum. However, she was far over her time, and they just let her go on.
Mm-hmm.
And that was quite a frustrating start. But like I said, we had quite a few voices in support, and so many voices that had great, strong testimony.
Well, the total, I would say, was 27 who were against, between online and in person. 21 in person.
Mm-hmm.
That was remarkable. So we know how much you've been working on this, Nandi. We're so appreciative of your work, your constant work, and just preparing these testimonies, helping those that want to step up and say something, and also I'm sure if anybody else who's listening or tuning in, if they want to give testimony, to definitely reach out, because I'm sure you'll be more than willing to help.
Absolutely. I would love to help whoever is willing, even if you feel uncomfortable, unsure. There were several voices today who gave very strong testimony, and it was their first time.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
First time either coming in person or first time testifying at all. So it's never too late or never too early. You don't feel like you have the experience or the understanding, we can help, give you some tips and walk you through that process. But it was great.
And I have one more question, and I don't know if India has a question, but how, what kind of, let's say, influence have when somebody sends those emails? We're always asking people to send emails. Do they make any difference?
I think they do, especially with some senators. There are some senators that they weigh more heavily on. They recognize just how many people in their district want or don't want an issue, and then they feel, compelled to rethink, to either have the issue tabled, or, we've seen that before where an issue was stricken, but then they brought a new iteration, and even that was tabled because of the overwhelming cry of the voices on our side that said, this is awful. This is absolutely horrendous, and it can't go forward. So it definitely does make a difference. There are some legislators that would try to ignore those voices, or to discredit them. However, they can't ignore the numbers. They can't ignore that they had hundreds or thousands of people saying, no, I do not support this bill. Yeah. They have to craft some way to convince themselves that they're still doing the right thing. And in that way, we are the sand in their wheels of progress, right? We're still making it uncomfortable. And for that, it's still a powerful thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I did hear that in the hearing, someone say something about progress, and that sand story where you gave the legislators that bottle of sand as a reminder that they are standing even when the wheels of quote unquote progress, which is no progress at all, are rolling forward. So that was very encouraging.
But Nandi, just know that we appreciate you so much, and thank you for all you continue to do. Just to even, I have to say personally, thank you for helping me to understand these bills.
Same here.
As I try to minister to our elected officials, but you are such a valuable part of our team, and thank you for standing for truth today. I know how hostile that place can be, but you were there, you were faithful, and the people that you brought to testify clearly were just very well prepared, and all the work just well done.
Thank you so much.
Well,
it was an honor to be in service.
Well, thank you so much, Nandi. Go get some coffee.
Yeah.
All right. God bless you.
You too.
Thank you. There you go.
Yes. Again, an encouragement to, if you want to testify, please see Nandi, because that'll be your number one resource.
That's the way to start.
Yeah.
Also, just go to our website if you have any questions. Thank you so much. I mean, I know if you're here because if you receive this, it's because you're a member of the Delaware Family Policy Council, Delaware Strong Families, and you support what we do. It means so much for us that you tuned in today.
Yes, absolutely.
It's so encouraging, especially doing this the first time.
Yes, to see how many of you jumped on and were engaging in the comments. Very encouraging for us on our first time. If you haven't been to one of our in-person meetings, you should reach out to either info@delawarefamilies.org. I believe that was dropped in the chat. Or you can reach out at our number 302-296-8698. I think I got that right.
Yeah, you did.
So you can reach out there and get information about our in-person meetings. That is where we will be giving updates on bills like this. We'll be able to update you all on what happens with the vote, what to do next, how to communicate with your individuals at church, with your pastor about these issues, how to pray about these issues. As John mentioned, we have the Tenacious Prayer Warriors Initiative. You'll get to learn more about that. So we hope to see you at one of those meetings. If we have another committee hearing coming up, we'll definitely do this again. Yeah. So you can let people know about it. Let them know that we're doing this for our DFPC members. For those of you who are locked arms with us, this is a way that we wanted to be able to help you, bless you, encourage you, and definitely give us feedback. Again, this is our first one, so we'd love to hear from you what you'd like to see for the next one.
So as a close-up, I have two things. One, pray.
Yes.
We need to pray. But also the Word of God tells us that prayer without action is dead. So we need to pray, but also mobilize. We need to tell others about what's happening here. Get involved. Just a call for action. Get involved. If you can, you don't even have to go to Legislative Hall to give a testimony. You can do it online, as you have seen it. You can get ready to do a powerful testimony right online, and that stays. It stays forever because they have to record it. So
absolutely. And go to DelawareFamilies.org/protectlife. If you haven't contacted your senator already, you can do that there. Also, there are resources at the bottom of that page that I would highly encourage you to look at. If there's anything there that you would like to see that would help you to have those courageous conversations, again, reach out and let us know and spread the word. Let your communities know what's happening and how they can make a difference and stand for life.
So I guess this is it for today.
Yep.
Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Again, my name is Jonathan Quetela.
And this is India. Thank you again for coming.
All right. God bless you.
All right.